Nothing on the show is to be construed as legal advice. The contents of this show are for informational purposes only.
Hello. Welcome to Know Your Rights, the Consumer Lawcast with me, Abbas, Kazerounian, and none other than Mona Amini.
Hi, everyone.
So we're having a special edition of the podcast today, and we are in kind of a serious situation, not just in America or just in California, it's worldwide, the whole coronavirus issue, which is predominantly a medical issue, as you've seen. You get all the medical experts, the CDC, as I think it is, that's putting out warnings. But there are actually legal ramifications of the coronavirus, and people are affected in a legal manner. And I think we just wanted to do a short episode because I think it's relevant, and I think you, the consumers, certainly need to educate yourselves on it. So, Mona, I was reading, that California has basically stated that it's in a state of emergency, I believe.
Yeah, that's right. So I believe as of March 4th, which was, Tuesday?
Yep.
I believe the 5th, the Attorney General's office actually declared a state of emergency in California.
Well, I think, I know a lot of deaths have happened in Washington, but certainly there have been a lot of occurrences of coronavirus.
Right, so recently you've seen in the news that there's, for example, the cases in Los Angeles, maybe Orange County, San Diego. It seems to be popping up throughout California, Northern California, of course, as well.
Right. So the question, I guess, is how does it affect you legally? Well, it can actually hurt you in the pocketbook. I mean, just talking broad brush strokes, the Dow Jones has crashed because of the coronavirus, and everybody's stock has plummeted, essentially. But on a more day-to-day, how it affects, the average person on Main Street, I think one of the things that we want to really advise the consumers on is you've got to be careful about price gouging. And, the Attorney General in California, Javier Becerra, actually put out a warning on this. Mona, what are the things that could potentially happen as far as price gouging goes? I mean, can this happen, at the very basic level of the gas station level, or are we talking, on more, bigger thing, on a macro level? Can it happen on a micro level too?
Yeah, absolutely. It could happen at the gas station, grocery stores. It can be for goods, services, kind of anything a person uses day to day. So
I think what you, the consumers, have to really be careful about is being vigilant that what you're buying is usually, the prices that you're used to paying. I think a lot of unscrupulous vendors out there are using this to their advantage to make an extra buck, which is really sad. And there's a law on this in California, actually. I actually got an email this morning from Mona, and I was like, ooh, I like this. This is good. I actually had no idea. So, this was your find, so please educate the people.
So actually, California Penal Code 396, it makes it illegal for the prices of goods and services to be increased beyond 10% more than their normal rates during the 30-day period following the declaration of a state of emergency. So that's really kind of the critical period where we're in now, where we've just recently had a state of emergency declared here in California. One problem is, of course, that goods are selling out in stores, but there's this opportunity for some retailers, people selling goods and services, to hike up these prices and really take advantage of this panic where everybody needs goods.
Right.
And they want to go out there and buy them, and sometimes they have to buy them despite this price hike.
Sure. So I'll talk about my personal experience about the shops running out in a minute, but let's just go back to the law. So from what I'm hearing, you're telling me that the law states that the vendors, the shops, they can't be increasing or putting a hike on normal merchandise by more than 10% of its usual price because of this state of emergency, because obviously it would be taking advantage of consumers. So just to give an example, if a gallon of milk hypothetically costs $2, and now there's a state of emergency, they can't charge more than $2.20. Correct?
That's right. So really, it's the price immediately preceding the state of emergency.
Sure.
So, not necessarily averaged out over a full year. So if, 2 weeks ago, like you said, you bought milk for $2 a gallon, and now all of a sudden it's more than $2.20 a gallon, or maybe $3 or $4 or $5 a gallon instead during this next 30 days, that might be price gouging.
What I actually think is actually interesting about this is that this is if you told me that law, I would think, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and I would think, that sounds like a good civil cause of action and a civil statute, but it's not a civil statute.
No, it's not. It's actually penal code. Yeah.
It's a crime.
Right. Absolutely.
So a shopkeeper can go to jail for this?
It's considered a misdemeanor, I think.
That's jail.
Yeah.
Like that, up to a year, isn't it, for a misdemeanor?
I think so.
Yeah, I think that's the difference between a misdemeanor and a felony. For a felony, you can be in prison for more than a year. A misdemeanor, it's up to a year.
Yeah.
And since we're talking about it as a distinction, so as consumers, if you if you're incarcerated for a misdemeanor, you generally go to jail, and that's the difference. And if it's over a year, you go to prison. And so there is a distinction between jail and prison.
Right.
I was at Costco last week, right? And I'm just weird, and I've always used alcohol to clean my surfaces in my house. Maybe it's my Persian hair, like ancestry or something. Yeah, my big fat Persian wedding, or how in my big fat Greek wedding the guy uses Windex for everything. I use alcohol. So and everybody makes fun of me, and I go to Costco usually once a year, right? And so I go there and I go once a year and I buy in bulk. I buy a year's worth of toilet paper, kitchen towel, and God forbid I forget my alcohol. I have to have my alcohol. Yeah. And literally as I'm walking to Costco, there's a big sign that this lady's carrying, and it says, "We're out of stock of toilet paper, kitchen towels, and alcohol."
Wow.
Rubbing alcohol. The three things I want most of, everything I needed is out. And I just thought it fascinating, and I was kind of making inquiry onto this, and obviously it's directly related to Corona.
Right.
And our producer here told me, let me just look at this. So the CFO for Costco said that their February sales were up 18%. 18%. As if Costco doesn't make enough money as it is.
Right. And they're doing sales in large volume, obviously. Yeah.
For sure. But so I think but the thing is I don't blame the public, because the experts, I was listening to CNN and everything, and they were saying you got to stock up for at least 2 weeks worth of food in case you want to quarantine yourself. Right. So I'm actually going to do that this weekend. I'm going to go buy food for 2 weeks.
It can't hurt.
Just in case.
It can't hurt.
But I think switching gears a little bit as far as this whole Corona issue goes, it's going to affect us more than just in the shops. So I was thinking, because as part of my job, as you know, I travel a lot.
Right.
And I'm getting alerts, a lot of flights are being canceled, and the airlines are saying we're trying to be more thorough with cleaning the airplanes and all that stuff. But the one thing that I'm worrying about from the consumer perspective is if you've made a reservation, right, and haven't bought a refundable ticket, how is that going to play out?
I mean, I've seen a lot of the airlines are giving free cancellations and stuff like that. So I think they've kind of foreseen this coming up. I think this would be one of those sort of, especially because it's a state of emergency, it'd be one of those things that I think even if you had a non-refundable ticket, that you might be able to ask for a refund.
So JetBlue sent me that exact email yesterday, right? And so they said, hey, if you are going to, we encourage you to keep booking, and in good faith, we are offering you free cancellations if you book from this period to that period.
Yeah.
And so I think if you're a consumer out there, because this is exactly what I'm doing, what I'm doing is taking screenshots or saving the emails, right?
Yeah.
So saving the emails in case it goes wrong.
Right.
And I think if you're buying a very expensive ticket, let's say an international one, and I don't think we're qualified to talk about necessarily the medical ramifications of traveling abroad.
No.
But as far as on a legal perspective goes, and by the way, guys, I just want to make sure this is not legal advice. This is informational. We are lawyers, but I don't ever want you to take what we're saying as legal advice, because laws differ in every state, and we don't have a relationship, attorney-client. And I know we always say this at the beginning of every show, but just we're just chatting and giving this is informational use only. So please bear that in mind always when you're watching this podcast or listening to this podcast. But I think, if I had an expensive ticket, whether it's international, whether it's going to New York, Boston, something, coast to coast, there tend to be more expensive tickets. It would kind of induce me to buy the travel insurance that you're always offered, right?
Yeah.
But I've got a feeling that there's going to be serious bad faith litigation maybe in a year or so as a result of this whole coronavirus thing. So people are going to buy the insurance, and insurance companies do what insurance companies do. They take your money for the premium and deny the claim, right?
Yeah.
And who's going to go litigate over an $80 insurance policy, right? But it could be a class action.
Yeah, absolutely. Everybody that's buying that insurance or that traveler's insurance, yeah.
For sure. So, I think, the overarching message that I'm kind of sending is obviously your document retention has to be better than it usually is, because a lot of consumers archive or delete emails. These emails that these airlines are sending to you there's one reason that they're doing it. One is to make you feel more calm, in quotation marks, and B, their business is hurting. The airline business is hurting, right?
Yeah.
They're sending these emails to encourage you to keep booking, to keep lining their pockets.
Right.
And that's good and well. We live in a free market, but there have to be consequences to these guarantees, warranties, and assurances that they're giving you. If they're saying we are going to give you free cancellation and with no charge, money back guarantees, any kind of stuff like that, you have to keep the documentation where they make these representations to you in case that happens. And the way that the whole coronavirus is going, from my perception, is that we could get there.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, these emails they're sending out emails because it's not their usual practice. Their original terms probably don't always allow for these types of refunds. So, a few months down the line where you notice this charge is on your credit card for a cancellation and you didn't keep that email, it might be more difficult to show that, you were promised that. So, try not to toss things out like your receipts or your emails that guarantee you free cancellation. You never know when you're going to need them.
Right. And I think the other thing that you've got to do when you get these, representations, whether it's in a commercial, whether it's, in a email form, there tends sometimes to be a bait and switch. And what we mean by bait and switch is where they bait you or they attract you to do something, but then they switch the terms on you, right? And that's what we mean in the legal industry as a bait and switch. And so in big letters in the email, they're like free cancellation. And then you drop down to the bottom of the email and this, and it's just the secret in the advertising campaign in industry, which is they don't want you to read the small print. So read the small print. Read the small print.
Yeah.
And I hope they're not doing that, because again, they'd be taking advantage of a bad situation to try and take advantage of consumers, which historically corporate America has done.
Sure, yeah. I mean, there's a horrible state right now, and definitely there's an opportunity for those that want to capitalize on it to really do so. So yeah, the small print, it might have date limitations, it might have time limitations.
Yeah.
If you want to take a look at that.
And before we kind of sign off here, I want to give you an example of the price gouging that we were talking about earlier, and that the Attorney General in California gave a warning about. Do you remember Hurricane Harvey in 2017?
Yeah.
So Hurricane Harvey, there was a really good case where the Texas Attorney General had to get involved because a gas station owner was doing exactly what we were describing before, because the state of Texas was in a state of emergency, and there were some unscrupulous shopkeepers, gas station owners, or whatever that were taking advantage of the situation. And I think in that particular scenario, the gas station owner was charging $20 a gallon for a gallon of gas.
Wow.
And then check this out, $99 for a case of water.
Water.
I mean, that's unconscionable, right?
Yeah.
We live in America. We have access to drinking water.
Yeah.
So, that was an example in Texas, but as I said earlier, in all states, there's probably going to be some kind of law. So in California, we have the penal code, which has a civil element to it, by the way.
Right, it does. So it's not just a criminal aspect, there's a civil aspect to it too.
And what are the penalties?
So it could be up to $5,000 per violation.
Per violation, is that like, so that's actually quite high,
Right, right. So, I mean, if you go to a store, I go to a store, our friend goes to a store, those could each be separate violations.
Well, being the creative lawyer that we are, or I am, and you are,
Yeah.
I would say it's per item.
Right. I mean, so yeah, if you buy 5 items at the store and each of them is hiked up by, 25%, then of
Yeah,
course.
so if you buy 10
Yeah.
items that are being gouged,
There you go.
you should be entitled to 25,000.
Right, so not necessarily per person, of course. That was
Yeah.
probably confusing.
But the moral of the story here is
Yeah.
that you have rights in California, right?
That's right, yeah.
But if you don't live in California and you're watching this in another one of the states in the U.S. And you don't have a similar statute, I think most statutes in the United States, most states, should I say, have a UCL, which is the unfair competition law. And even if you don't have a statute that's as strong as this in California, you can probably use the unfair competition law in your specific state to be able to, vindicate your rights, because this is not okay in any way, shape, or form, either under the law, but I think even if you're in a conservative jurisdiction where the jurists tend to be conservative, I think optically this probably would not sit well with them.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, states are going to want to protect the people that live there. And, these people are being subjected to really unfair prices. There's going to be either like an unfair competition law, unfair deceptive sort of business practices law in kind of almost every state that probably could be seen to protect these consumers.
For sure. Well, I'm going to dedicate this specific and special episode of the Know Your Rights to Mona, because she's the one that alerted me to this morning with the email that I got telling me about this code in California. So thank you, Mona, for that.
Yeah, sure.
Until next time, stay healthy and keep it legal.